It's January 2026. We are well past the days of asking a chatbot to write a haiku or summarize an email. We are now squarely in the era of the deep research agent.
That's right. The landscape has shifted fundamentally. We're no longer looking at tools that just retrieve information. We are looking at autonomous systems capable of multi-day investigations, cross-document synthesis, and complex reasoning. But Jordan, there is a massive elephant in the room.
Which is?
How do you grade a student that's read more books than the teacher?
That is the core question of the report we're breaking down today. Deep Research Evaluation, the new standard for Agentic AI investigation. It's a strategic technical report filed by our editorial team just this morning. Alex, for years we've heard about benchmarks. Why are the old ways broken?
Because the old ways were static. Think about 2023 or 2024. We relied on things like MMLU, Massive Multitask Language Understanding. It was basically a multiple choice test, A, B, C, or D. Did the AI get the capital of France right? Did it solve the math problem?
Right, standardized testing.
Exactly. But a deep research agent, let's call them DRAs, doesn't produce a multiple choice answer. It produces a document, a 50-page due diligence report, a legal discovery synthesis. You can't grade that with an answer key.
And you can't have a human read every single output to check for accuracy, right? If an agent takes an hour to write a report that would take a human 40 hours, you defeat the purpose if a human has to spend 10 hours grading it.
Precisely. It's the evaluation crisis. Human evaluation is too expensive and prone to fatigue. So the industry has pivoted to something fascinating, agentic evaluation.
Using AI to grade AI?
It sounds recursive, I know, but it's the only way to scale. This report outlines a new framework where we automate the role of the supervisor. We're talking about testing reasoning density and factual integrity without a human in the loop.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of how that works, because the tech stack here is wild, let's set the scene on what these agents are actually doing. The report draws a sharp line between the RAG era and this new deep research era.
It's a critical distinction. RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, was the buzzword of 2024. That's essentially user asks a question, system fetches 3 paragraphs from a database, system summarizes paragraphs. It's great for customer support.
But terrible for knowledge work.
Right. Deep research is different. A DRA doesn't just fetch, it decomposes. If you give it a vague objective, like analyze the impact of the EU AI Act on US healthcare startups, it doesn't just Google that phrase. It breaks it down. It iterates. It reads hundreds of pages, synthesizes conflicting viewpoints, and produces a citation-backed report.
And that complexity creates what the report calls the trust gap.
The trust gap is real. We're seeing enterprises, specifically in finance, legal, and pharma, hesitating. They're terrified of sycophantic hallucination.
Sycophantic hallucination. That's a great term. It sounds like a psychological disorder.
In a way, it is. It's when the AI invents facts to support a narrative it thinks you want to hear. It's trying to be persuasive, not accurate. And if you're a private equity firm deciding on a $100 million acquisition, a persuasive lie is catastrophic.
So let's talk about the solution. The report details a modern deep research evaluation architecture. It seems to be split into 2 main pipelines.
2 pipelines. The first is persona-driven task construction.
This is interesting because usually when you test software, you use a fixed data set. You have your gold set of questions.
And that doesn't work here because the models memorize the test questions. So instead of a fixed list, the framework generates test cases on the fly. It starts with persona generation.
So it creates a character?
Yes. For example, the system might say, you are a skeptical macroeconomist looking for bearish signals in the EV market. Then it creates a topic relevant to that persona.
So it's role-playing to test the agent.
Exactly. And then it applies dual filtering. This is crucial. First, task qualification. It rejects simple questions. If you can answer it with one Google search, it's not a deep research task. Throw it out. Second, search necessity. It ensures the task requires synthesizing multiple sources.
So we have an infinite stream of complex, realistic, never-before-seen exam questions. That covers the input. But what about the grading? That's the second pipeline.
This is where the magic happens, the Agentic Evaluation pipeline, and it's harder to grade a report than to write one. The report highlights two distinct agents used for grading. The first is the Adaptive Pointwise Quality Evaluator.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but the concept is elegant. Standard rubrics are too vague. You can't just ask, is this helpful? So this evaluator scans the task and dynamically writes a rubric just for that specific question.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If the task is medical, the evaluator adds criteria for clinical evidence levels. If it's financial, it adds criteria for data recency. It changes the grading scale based on the subject matter.
That makes sense. But Alex, quality is subjective, facts are not. How do we catch the lies?
That brings us to the second agent, the active fact checker. The report calls this the skeptic agent. This is the most critical innovation in the 2026 landscape.
How does it differ from just checking the footnotes?
Most older evaluators just checked if the summary matched the provided documents. The active fact checker ignores the provided citations entirely. It assumes the agent might be lying. It extracts every atomic claim in the report and performs its own independent web searches.
Wow, so it's basically cross-examining the AI against the live internet.
Exactly. It flags statements as unsupported, contradicted, or hallucinated. It doesn't trust, it verifies.
That sounds incredibly resource-intensive.
And that is the number one challenge listed in the report. Cost. Running these loops is expensive. You have the research agent using maybe 100,000 tokens to write the report, and then the evaluator agent using another 50,000 tokens to grade it. The cost per test is high.
The report also mentions something called recursive bias.
Right. LLMs judging LLMs. If your evaluator agent is a smaller, cheaper model, say GPT-5 Mini, and it's grading a powerhouse like Gemini 2.5 Pro, the evaluator might not understand the nuance. It might penalize an insight just because it's too smart for the judge to comprehend.
It's like a high school student grading a PhD thesis.
Exactly. And then there's latency. A full evaluation loop can take 10 to 20 minutes. You can't do this in real time while a user is waiting. This is strictly for pre-deployment testing, CI/CD for AI.
Let's look at the market. Who is actually good at this right now? The report mentions a few key players as of January 2026.
It's a three-horse race in the enterprise space right now. You have Gemini 2.5 Pro. The report notes it excels in maintaining structure and narrative coherence. If you need a long, readable report, Gemini is strong.
Then there's Monas.
Monas is showing a lot of promise for high-liability industries. It focuses heavily on verified statements. It's less creative, perhaps, but much safer for legal or medical use.
And OpenAI.
OpenAI Deep Research is the strong generalist. However, the report notes it faces challenges with citation consistency in long-horizon tasks. It sometimes hallucinates the source of the data, even if the data itself is correct.
Which brings us to the case studies. I love these because they show where the rubber meets the road. The first one is about financial due diligence in private equity.
This was a fascinating failure mode. A PE firm used a DRA to scout a logistics company in Southeast Asia. They ran an agentic evaluation with 50 red team tasks.
And what did they find?
The agent was glossing over regulatory risks because they were in local language documents. It prioritized English sources.
Bias in the training data showing up in the research.
Exactly. The firm had to tune the search necessity filter to force the agent to prioritize local government gazettes. Without that evaluation loop, they might have missed a massive compliance risk.
Then there's the biotech example, an academic literature review on CRISPR.
This one highlights the difference between quality and factuality. The agent wrote a beautiful report, high quality score, but the active fact checker flagged it because it conflated data from phase 1 and phase 2 trials.
That's a dangerous mix-up.
Incredibly dangerous. The lab actually switched to a drier model that had worse prose but higher factuality scores.
The last case study is Legal Discovery, a law firm synthesizing emails for IP theft.
Here, the problem was politeness. The agent was hedging its findings using soft language.
It didn't want to accuse anyone.
It's trained to be helpful and harmless, but a prosecutor needs accusations. They adjusted the persona module to aggressive prosecutor and penalized hedging language in the grading rubric. Suddenly, the agent started delivering the hard evidence they needed.
It really shows that good is subjective. You need to define what good looks like for this specific job. So, Alex, looking ahead, the report outlines a roadmap for 2027 and 2027. What's next?
Standardization. We're going to see these evaluation protocols become ISO standards. You won't be able to buy an enterprise AI agent without seeing its deep research cert.
And self-correction loops?
That's the holy grail. Future agents will run these evaluations internally. They'll draft a report, then their own internal skeptic will fact-check it, find the hallucinations, fix them, and then show it to the user. A thought loop before speaking.
That would solve the latency issue for the human, at least. You just get the final polished product.
And don't forget multimodal research, evaluating research done on video and audio. Watch these 10 hours of earnings calls and summarize sentiment. That's coming next.
So, for the CTOs and the developers listening to this, what is the strategic advice from the report?
For CTOs, stop looking at MMLU scores. They are irrelevant. You need to budget for inference testing. Accept that testing these agents costs money. Computing power is the price of trust. It's cheaper than a lawsuit.
And for the developers?
Decomposition and citation. The highest scoring agents are the ones that break tasks down into the tiniest granular queries. And train your agents to cite everything. If it's not cited, the automated fact checker will flag it as a hallucination.
It feels like we are moving from the wow phase to the work phase.
That's the perfect way to put it. We spent 3 years saying, wow, look at what it can write. Now we are asking, can I bet my $10 million investment decision on this?
And the answer is only if you audit the machine.
Trust, but verify, using an agent.
A fascinating look at the back end of the AI revolution. You can find the full text of the report, Deep Research Evaluation, on our website. For DX Today, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Alex. Thanks for listening.